All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with my friend Ian Stanley. Man, Ian, good to see you. It's been a while. Welcome, man. Good to have
Man,
you.
it has been a while.
It has been. In fact, I know we were talking right before we hit the record, but I think the last time that you and I saw each other in person was down in Dallas, and I know Joel Irway was there, and Melvin Pillay, and a few other people. I mean, that was a good time, man. That was
Nick Peterson, some other people. When was that?
Yeah, oh man, I want to say that was in like 2018, I believe. Sometime I could look it up and find out. But
I think I was living in Austin still at the time, so that makes sense.
You were living in Austin. Yeah. So time just flies, man.
It does. The older you get, the faster it seems to go by.
For sure.
I've got a birthday coming up in 9 days, so I'm feeling old.
Well, I'll tell you what I would like to do is just kind of start off by letting you talk about a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you serve, because Ian, what I know is you're a one badass guy, and you got not only do you got a gift and a skill set, but I just love your sense of humor, man. and some of these videos you put out, and actually your work, you just told me as soon as we hopped on, you're working on one right now. And I'm like, I can only imagine what this is going to be. So yeah, let's kind of start there and just set a little bit of context for who Ian Stanley is.
Yeah. I'm Ian Stanley. I'm half English and half American, which means everybody thinks I'm Australian. Even Aussies think I am. So I have my main business now is called Almost Passive Income. So we help people make more money in less time while having more fun. We change the way people think and feel about money. So I teach a bunch of money meditations, money blocks, stuff that you learn in your childhood. And then we teach a lot of email marketing as a skill. So teaching people how to write emails for other companies. And then we have a mastermind called the Wolf Pack, where we help people get into the 7-figure, 8-figure range. So that's the main business. And over the years, I've had a bunch of businesses. I had a water filter company that I sold to the fastest growing startup in Canada. I have sold all sorts of different stuff as a copywriter. That's sort of how I got my start. Sold over $100 million worth of products. I wrote a book about it called Confessions of a Persuasion Hitman. And I have a supplement company now that I kind of don't focus on enough. And then I do stand-up comedy. So I'm actually going on my first tour starting next month. And then with Garrett Gunderson, who I think you know. Yes. So Garrett and I are starting a comedy tour next month. And I've done a lot of silly videos on the internet that went viral, especially back when Facebook was kind of with the algorithm. I had Lai Topez. I did these parodies. Lai Topez, Very Grinder Chuck, Kent Cardone, Ryan Danielle Moron, Muscle Funson, a bunch of different things. So I've done that, done silly videos, do stand-up, and comedy is definitely my favorite thing in the world. So we're working on, I'll just say it here, I don't know when this gets released.
Okay.
But we have to do this video in the next week anyways, because it's so topical, but we're going to create a trailer for a movie called Bottom Gun Maverick, and it's Top Gun underwater. It's going to have all the things you want, the explosions, the homoerotic, volleyball, glistening men in the sun, all that stuff. So we're going to make the trailer for that this week. So that should be a pretty fun thing that hopefully that should go. If we pull it off and make it look like a real trailer, I think it should go legitimately viral. Tom Cruise is an American hero. Yeah. He's my favorite. I have stood by Tom Cruise through all the chaos. People are like, oh, but he's crazy in this. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. You put that guy in a movie, I'm watching that movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't make horseshit. And I think at a certain point in his career too, he's like, oh, I get it. Like he started making fun of himself. And if that guy gave me a motivational speech before anything, I couldn't lose. If Tom Cruise just looked at me in his Tom Cruise way, 100%, I'm killing whatever I have coming up next. So I'm still riding high off the Top Gun after seeing the movie. We went and saw it literally like 5 days ago, and I got in a drag race right after we left the movie theater. I just was so amped.
You were.
I couldn't help myself.
I took my 14-year-old son Brock to see it last Saturday. So I'm like, And I'll tell you, the first movie was, I think it was like 1984 when the first Top Gun movie came out, I believe. I was like, what's that? Like 38 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this nostalgia thing too. I mean, it was I thought it was an awesome movie.
It's also better. It's a better movie, hands down. The new one. It's a much better movie. Yeah. And it's a phenomenon. It's what happens when you stop making a movie some stupid woke political agenda bullshit and just make a movie about a hero. It's what movies used to be. They would just, this is a movie. You're going to leave feeling inspired. You're going to have fun. We're not trying to fucking solve the world's issues with some stupid placement of some dumbass comment. Yeah. So not that I care about wokeness at all. Not that I have feelings about it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So now that we've kind of got some context set here, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of everybody listening. So, have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not even have been possible if not for this person? And I'm really excited to hear your story, your experience around this, as well as give you the opportunity to share and honor somebody who's had such a profound impact on your life and on your business.
Yeah, it's difficult to decide on one. One was more recent, and I don't know if I would necessarily not be where I am, but it was a very profound shift. Okay. Well, the person actually that would definitely have the biggest impact that I would have to give credit to would be Brent Charlton, who actually isn't what I was going to say at first, but he was my therapist first. Worked with him for close to a year, and then he's executive coach, whatever you want to call it, but therapy background, and completely changed my life in so many different ways. And then him and I partnered together and started a business called Lionheart, where we help people work through the deeper mental and emotional blocks that were holding them back. And our tagline was essentially, most of your business problems, once you get to a certain level of skill, aren't business problems, they're emotional problems or mental problems. Mm-hmm. And the problem isn't your business, the problem's you. And so over 2 years of us running that business, we did 30 or 40, 50 workshops, something like that. And so I basically got like 30 years of therapy in 2 years. And he profoundly changed my life in ways that I could never repay him for. So that was huge. I'm going to break your rules. That's what I do anyway. So I'll say,
that's all right.
You can ask follow-up questions, whatever. He really, to say that I wouldn't be where I am is he's that person.
Okay.
And then really when I was 19 years old, because I got mugged when I was 15, and I got very obsessed with self-defense and not being the type of person who would be a victim. And I found this guy named Rory Miller, he was a prison guard for 25 years. He wrote a book called Meditations on Violence, a comparison between real world martial arts and real world self-defense training. And I've had the pleasure of training with him a couple of times. And really, there's a crazy longer story here. I ran into him in Boise at my first event. He walked around a corner and it was him. He lives in Oregon. It was this wild thing. And I told him, like, you're one of the 5 most influential people in my life. It's like, we have this whole event. I'm this person now. And he was just like, holy shit. And he actually is one of the reasons I became a great copywriter, because even though he's a prison guard, he wrote copy. He didn't write copy, but he wrote books in a way that I loved. His sentence structure, the way he writes, and he always is like, basically his book opens up with, you don't have to listen to me. I could be some 500-pound, dude living in his mom's basement writing about this stuff. And, it may not be real. He's not. I've had the pleasure of meeting him and knowing that he's the truth. He's been in over 300 hand-to-hand encounters. And one of the things I learned from him is don't go to people who haven't done what they're teaching. There's so many online gurus who only make money teaching people how to make money. And there's the coaches who coach coaches to coach other coaches about coaching. But he was profound in learning how to protect myself. And really, he's the reason I didn't get into fights in college, because he talks about the monkey dance and how the ego is the whole, purpose of these bar fights and stuff. And so despite being well-trained, he's the reason I didn't. fight. And my teammates on the tennis team would always be like, yo, bro, if we get in a fight, you got my back, right? I'm like, well, yeah, but don't get in fights for stupid reasons. Like, be a good person. And then the person who really most recently had a big impact, and this is who I was thinking of originally, is a guy named Gary Chappell.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you know his name. He was the CEO of Nightingale Conant. And when they became the biggest, self-help company in the world, and he was doing calls for like $99. And I was like, how is this possible? And we've probably only talked 5 or 6 times, and I've been meaning to reach out to him again for the past year, and I just have, well, maybe 7 or 8 months. But each conversation I've had with him has been profound. And the first conversation we had, I was like, I'm going to talk to this guy about business. That's what we're talking about. That's why I'm calling this guy. We talked for like an hour and a half, and my homework at the end of it was to love my mother unconditionally. And I was like, what the fuck type of business advice is this? This isn't what I underpaid you for. And his thing was just how that translates into the rest of life. And my mom and I, my mom's, how it is with mothers where, well, at least with mine, everything could be unbelievable. I always used to joke, she could win the lottery for $100 million and she'd be like, well, it's only 50 million after taxes. Like, that's how she sees things. She'd be like, if she was Jesus Christ's mother, she'd be like, oh, my son's Jesus Christ. I'd be like, well, yeah, but Dominic's a doctor, so not paying the bill, that Messiah stuff. And so she can just say stuff, and we get along. Like, well, it's not like we have some bad relationship, but to love her unconditionally, it's like I couldn't imagine something harder than to just always be like, yep,
love you,
and
Mom.
so that was my homework, and it was very difficult, and it's translated into a lot of other areas of life, as well as her and my dad and I are like best friends, and we get along super. They're still together. They have been my whole life. But he told me that, and then he told me one other thing, and this was really the biggest thing that's shifted over the past 2 years, I think, since we spoke first, which was, I have a tendency to have 3, 4, 5 businesses at once, especially after I left my first job. It was like, I have 6 businesses. And, oh, wow, you're so cool. And it's like, well, none of them are fucking good. And that's what I learned is if you have 3 businesses or 4 businesses, then the other people who are in those businesses also have 3 or 4 businesses. And you're not all giving it 33% of your time. You're giving it like 1/10 of your time and your energy and your thoughts, and none of it works. And so for 6 months, I had the supplement company, I was starting it, and he was like, well, let's just hold off. And he basically he gave me 2 analogies that really resonated with me. And the first one was, he's like, you're trying to start a fire with a magnifying glass, and the second you start to get some embers and smoke, you're moving the magnifying glass somewhere else. And the other analogy was, you're pushing 2 boulders up a hill. The second you get momentum on one, you move and that boulder rolls back down. And that was really what always happened to me in business. I couldn't really get past like $100,000 a month for myself, because I would everything I did also worked. And that may sound arrogant or whatever, but it's a huge downside, because every piece of copy I've ever written has at least broken even on cold traffic. So then you go, oh, well, now we're going to get another funnel and another funnel. And instead of going, let's go make this thing absolutely huge, I'm like, let's do another thing and another thing or another business. So he said, for 6 months, you just can do one thing. And so that's when we actually launched our 90 Days to Freedom program in our company, which is now our flagship program. It's like $5,000 course, teaches people how to write emails for other companies. We've changed tons of lives. People gone from living with their parents to making, $15,000 a month. And it was because for those 6 months, I just like, I'm saying no. I'm saying no to everything else. And it's the same advice I continue to give to people that come to me now, and stuff is just do less. Yeah. Do less shit better.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say no, because becoming successful is about saying yes. And then staying successful without being a miserable asshole is about saying no. And they're contradictory skills. It's like this one skill gets you there, and then the opposing skill gets you further. And so he was really the first one to just be like, cut off all this shit and just be focused. And so that's continued to be the hardest thing for me, but also the most powerful thing is just when I decide this is it, this is the thing. And to the point where my business partner,
I don't know what happened, Ian. I've never had this happen before, but it completely froze here.
Okay. So yeah, I was saying even my business partner had 2 to 3 businesses, or when we were, as we've been doing this, and then he just stopped all the other stuff. And it's been another profound impact. Just, it's crazy what happens when you just do one thing. You're like, hey, we're just going to do this. This is the thing. And then you spend all your waking time thinking about that thing instead of all of these different businesses. Because even though you go, oh, it only takes an hour to a week to do this other thing, it's bandwidth, and it just steals from your capacity.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to show us. And the thing that you were talking about your mom, and it was Gary, right, who told you love your mom unconditionally. And I had a friend of mine, gosh, years ago. He was a mentor, and I was investing in his help. And he was like telling me, he's like, Kevin, he kind of told me the same thing, which is you just love people for who they are, complete with everything, with their faults and everything. And if you could just love them for who they are, and you can just be the same exact way, he's like, it's just going to be way better off, friends. So how is that advice, that to love your mom unconditionally, how is that transferred over to the relationships you have with people in business and all that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier in other stuff. It's a lot harder with my mom. That was the thing for me, is I think I tend to like people. There are people I'm a human that I don't like, but I accept people as they are. My mom was just, that's the thing. It's like, if you go and do the hardest thing possible, it makes everything else easier. So, like I said, I do stand-up, and I also speak, at entrepreneur events and stuff like that. And in doing stand-up is so much harder than speaking, that speaking to me is one of the easiest things in the world. And to so many people, that's like, it's the number one fear. It's above death. People would rather die than be on a stage. And so for me, it's like, I always think of it as Fight Club. It's like, you turn up the volume in this one area of your life and everything else gets more chill. And so, yeah, loving my mom unconditionally just makes it a lot easier. It's like, if I can do it with this woman, I can do it with anyone, because they've got, 30 years of triggering and trauma that you're dealing with. It's not some person you've just met. It's like, you ever like hang out with a friend and they're with their mom or their dad, and their mom says something that's not very bad at all, and they're like, oh my God, you're such a bitch. And you're like, whoa, overreaction. And then you're like, oh yeah, they've heard that for 25 years. That's why that bothered them. It's like, it's a lot harder, And so, but it was also, it's like, she must have just turned 70, which she wouldn't want me to say. But she, she's not going to change. No. But the funny thing is, the more you love somebody as they are, the more they do end up changing for the better. Instead of trying to change them, you just like, yeah, I love you. Doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy. Most of the best things in life aren't easy. They're just, but they're worth it.
That's right. Well, Ian, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And for anybody listening to this, is like, dang, Kev, I really like Ian. I like what he stands for. I like the way he shows up. What's the best way for them to get more inside info on some of the stuff you guys are doing?
Yeah, so you can go to Becoming Ian Stanley on Instagram. I've been posting more and more stuff there for my comedy and different things. I've got a YouTube channel, Ian Stanley. And then the best thing to do would probably be to go to moneydnaquiz.com and go take our quiz on the 5 main money blocks, find out what yours is, and work through that stuff, because that'll change your life profoundly. And then also my book is just at persuasionhitman.com if you want to laugh and learn some stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Any last words you want to say share before we call it a wrap?
Listen to the people who are further along than you. I think that's a big one, is when you're getting it. So many people get advice from people and they just don't listen to those people and they think they know better. But if you've paid somebody to be your coach, just listen.
Yeah.
Assume they're right until you prove them wrong. Don't assume they're wrong until you prove that you're right. Like, just take your ego out of it. Let the expert be the expert. Like when I do consulting, if they don't want to do what I say, then I don't want to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of my ego, but because I know that's why they're paying me a lot of money. Just listen to the people who you pay.
Good. Well, Ian, thanks again for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You bet.